Hi, everyone. I managed to, I really thought I had it this time. I checked all of the links, I checked discussion postings, I did it all, and somehow managed to do an 11-minute introduction to the course that is saved on my desktop computer back at my house in Morgantown. And somehow got linked private and it is not showing up on my YouTube channel. I'm going to still keep looking for it, but I thought I'd just like try to recap some of it. Unfortunately, I can't recap you meeting my gray tabby Sheldon. As soon as I go back, I'll post the thing up so you can see it if you want to. I This topic, this particular module is on spinal cord injury, which is something that has um, been part of my life in friends and family and people that I've gotten to know since I was a kid. My mom worked at Woodrow Wilson Rehab Center in Fishersville, Virginia. There was a network of state-operated comprehensive rehab centers that existed for decades until some of the more private rehab facilities started to come into being. So my mom went to work there when I was 7, and she believed in dragging me along to work. So I got to hang out, and she would send me off to bother somebody besides her, that's for sure. And I often ended up sitting and talking or doing different crafts or whatever was going on with a lot of the people who were in because they had a spinal cord injury. They were using wheelchairs, and my mom loves to tell the story that when I was for one Christmas when I was about 8, I had decided that I wanted a wheelchair for Christmas because all the guys had been teaching me how to do wheelies and everything else on. I thought it looked like a lot of fun. A little warped perspective if you really get down to it. I was lucky and I was very fortunate all through my life to meet some incredibly gifted people in service to the rehabilitation world who used wheelchairs or other mobility devices to move around. And in fact, my career, I think I got it in the text, my career counselor when I was in high school worked for Mary Baldwin College. She was the first woman to have survived having quadriplegia in, I think, the 40s or something, early 40s. Lillian Pennell, she was quite a force. She was an amazing woman. And I was fortunate to meet her. She actually went to my church. And which actually, now that I think about it, the number of people who worked at Woodrow Wilson went to my Presbyterian church. We had a whole half row that was broken out so people in wheelchairs could sit in the first row. Now we know that we need to break it up a little differently so people can sit with their loved ones. Again, it was a very different environment. I ended up continuing to work in rehab. I actually went into rehab, which I didn't expect to, because I was going to be a teacher. But I got the chance to continue to work with a lot of people who had disabilities because it was something people tend to want to go into fields that either our families have done, our friends have introduced us to, or provide some sort of sometimes when you get what you get, you want to give back. And that happens a lot in rehab, whether it's substance abuse rehab or physical rehab, cognitive rehab, whatever. So there were a lot of people around me who were in very high leadership positions who happened to be in a wheelchair. It wasn't a big deal to me. I remember a friend of mine in DC went to a going away party, who happened to be in a wheelchair for not because of a spinal cord injury, but because of a form of muscular dystrophy. He and his wife had thrown me a party because I was moving to Montana. And by chance, there were, I don't know, 6 people in wheelchairs in the room. And this friend of mine who is very a culturally diverse oriented person and used to talk about how much she loved the fact that the area she lived in was so culturally diverse, told me years later that she had a physical reaction when she walked into the room and saw so many people in wheelchairs. And I remember thinking, they're in wheelchairs. What's the big deal? And for her, it's the first time she'd ever really even, she said, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but it's probably the first time, other than maybe in a nursing home or something, where I was around people in wheelchairs. And it just threw me, and I didn't know quite how to deal with it because, you know, everybody was in their wheelchair for different reasons. Some very vibrant people, take it from me. They were professionals and just incredible people. But that's one of the reasons why I'm thrilled that our accrediting body is requiring that all counseling programs start including information about disability in the curriculum, because other than rehab counseling or a program like ours that's combined, you really don't get any information. It's the largest minority in this country, and we're attending to the needs of a lot of other minorities, but nobody had thought to make sure that we included disability. I'm kind of wondering if even, I know our trauma class in on the on-campus program does address traumatic brain injury, but I wonder how many actually do. I know I said that last week, but now I think about it a little bit more. So there's a lot of reasons for us to be conscious of how people are living with a disability, what goes on, and what are some of the challenges that we forget exist for them. I'll give you an example. Well, I had a project in New York City, and a colleague of mine and friend was with me, and we came out of the hotel, and we needed to get to a place relatively quickly, and a cab was the best option. So I said, well, let's just catch a cab. And he said, well, I'm going to tell you that if I go out with you, they'll not stop, because it takes more time to get me in and get my wheelchair into the trunk. And I went, really? And he goes, yeah. So I said, well, let's try this. I don't know why we took the time, because we were in a bit of a hurry, but you know, sometimes the researcher and you just want to pop out. So we went out and stood. Cab after empty cab went by. So he went back and stood in, kind of hid in the alcove of the hotel. I flagged one down, and he zipped up. And I stood in a way that the cab could not take off. And the guy had to load up the wheelchair. I mean, some of that I get, for them, it's an economic issue, but it was just one of those like, whoa. I wasn't used to actually, well, I was in DC at the time, but a lot of people in DC can use the metro very, very easily. And I hate to say it, when the elevator's down in the metro systems, again, it just puts a crimp into people's lives that we don't think about or have to rely on. Now, I have some friends that are very adept at going down the moving stairs, the escalators, and that scares the hell out of me. But they do it, and they do it confidently. I don't know how they do it. I have this one friend who I hired to do some trainings with me. There were 3 or 4 of us, and I always made sure I had a person with a significant disability as part of the training team, because it was on substance abuse and disability. And it was a lot of people who are in wheelchairs for spinal cord injuries, particularly paraplegia, do a lot of swimming and a lot of upper body building because they rely on it so much. And he had this massive, shoulders and everything. And he popped on that escalator. I'm like, I thought I'd seen it all, but very adept at it. Like I said, scared the devil out of me. So the limitations that just go on day in and day out. And I can tell you one thing that kept me from ever going into a handicap accessible stall was a friend of mine. We needed to catch a train to go up to New York. The same person had to catch the train going up to New York City, and he decided he better go in and relieve himself. And he is in a wheelchair, so the large stall was the only one he could get into. And he went in there. He said, well, there was a guy in there reading the newspaper. I couldn't see a disability anywhere under that. And he wouldn't leave. He wouldn't get up. He said he couldn't. So he had to miss. That was the only stall he could get into. So when you see a line of 15 people and there's 5 stalls and only one's, the person with a disability should be moved up in the line to get into the stall, because they have to wait for that one, not for one of the 5. And there's so much we can learn about how to address the needs of people in general. I think I'm gonna have to. I was trying to see a friend. My friend is uh, plowing something over there with a tractor. Um, anyway, I hope you'll enjoy the module this week. I'm also going to send out a little note on virtual meetings. I mean, I don't want to call them virtual because they're not really virtual. They're just teleconference meetings through Zoom. I have some office hours, and I want to talk through some of the assignments that are coming up that are important. Make it easier if we talk through them, to be honest with you. But be very, very conscious of the questions this week about how does a mental health therapist and a rehab counselor work with a person who's spinal cord injured. I've given you resource documents. It's not something you need to know for an exam, but you're going to need to use those resource documents depending on the disability you choose, particularly for the rehab one down the road. But you'll learn a lot more about how you can work no matter what arena you're in. All right, I'll talk to you later. Thanks.